Good afternoon, and welcome to the closing ceremony for Latinx History Month at USC. My name is Dr. Darlene Parra Robles, Professor of Clinical Education and Associate Dean for Diversity and Equity with the USC Rossier School of Education. Over the last month, numerous USC students, faculty, and staff have participated in a number of virtual events and conversations consistent with the theme, Reclaiming Our Stories, Hopes, and Dreams. We are excited that many community members from South Los Angeles and the East Side are also able to join us this afternoon. Before I introduce today's participants, I want to give a special thanks to all the students, staff, and faculty who have contributed to Latinx Heritage Month. In particular, I would like to thank the departments who have explored and highlighted the diversity of the Latinx community, including the USC Asian Pacific American Student Services, the USC Center for Black Cultural and Student Affairs, the USC Latinx Chicanx Center for Advocacy and Student Affairs, known as La Casa, the LGBTQ and Student Center, and the USC Latino Alumni Association. Thank you all for all your work this month for an incredible events that have held virtually. Today, we are honored to come together to celebrate and learn from American labor leader and civil rights activist, Dolores Huerta, founder of the Dolores Huerta Foundation and co-founder of the United Farm Workers. We're also fortunate that Dolores will be interviewed by USC President Dr. Carol Folt. As we all know, Dr. Folt serves as the 12th president of the University of Southern California. She is a highly experienced leader, international recognized life scientist, award-winning teacher, and the first woman to lead our university. And like me, a proud product of the community college system. Thank you, Dr. Folt, for your leadership and your commitment to put the needs of students first while developing meaningful partnerships with our community stakeholders. And now I would like to say a few words about our guest of honor, Dolores Huerta. Dolores was inspired by her mother, Alicia, and her devotion to community activism began at a very early age. Like many of our La Casa students, she was heavily involved in numerous student groups in high school. Her firsthand experience with income inequality sparked her desire for change and pursuit of better economic opportunities, not only for herself, but her community. She served in the Stockton Community Service Organization, where she met Cesar Chavez, and together they founded the United Farm Workers. Dolores' organizing skills were critical to the movement and helped secure workers' rights for farm workers. In the organization, Dolores served as vice president for 4 decades and was an outspoken force in breaking down gender barriers in politics. And in 2002, when she founded the Dolores Huerta Foundation, where she continues to provide work on equality for LGBT community and also education reform. And now I'd like to turn the program over to President Folt.
Thank you so much, Professor Robles, for that introduction and for introducing our incredible guest speaker, Dolores Huerta, and telling so much about her incredible contributions. And I just want to add my deep gratitude to Dolores for being here. You can't imagine someone that could embody this entire celebration of stories, hopes, and dreams. There couldn't be anybody here speaking to us that could do that better than you could. And thank you so much for taking the time and coming here to talk with us today. Your leadership over the years has inspired so many people. And just as importantly, you are such a role model for our students, for our faculty, our staff, for our administration, and it's just a privilege to have you here. What I'm excited about today is that I get to present to you questions raised by our students. That's always the best place to go because they will let you know what they're really interested in. So realize these are really top of mind for them. They're the things they wish they could ask you in person. And it's so special that they and so many others are able to tune in and listen to your answers. And I think it's a fantastic conclusion for Latinx History Month. And the way we think about it, it should be the opening of these conversations that last all year. I was able to speak at USC's kickoff event, and it just feels like a fantastic way to come full circle to be here with all of you for this conclusion. So I think I'll go straight in to some of our students' questions. Of course, you've been a role model for activism. And one thing I find, and I'm sure you find it too, is that every generation has its own way of being activists. And we are certainly seeing an upsurge of activism and principle in our students and across the entire country. And it's something that I think really I look at as a symbol for real progress ahead. So I think we'd love to hear you talk about how you got involved in activism. And one of the students want to know, do you have advice for someone who is interested in following in your footsteps and seeing themselves with a life given to purpose and service for others through activism?
Thank you very much. And I cannot tell you how honored I am to be interviewed by you, the president of the university. I have two of my children that are Trojans that graduated from USC. My son, Fidel, who's a doctor, and my daughter, Maria Elena, who is now the director of YWCA Center there in Los Angeles. But to your question, I think I have been blessed and ordered to be able to be an activist. And of course, I want everybody in the world to be an activist. Helen Keller said that one of the greatest evils that we have in human beings that science has never been able to cure is apathy. And I believe that my role in life is try to cure that apathy and let everybody know that they can make a difference by being an activist, by coming together, by taking direct action. And this is, of course, the way that we can make changes in our society. And a lot of people might say, well, what does that mean, being an activist? It can be anywhere from people protesting in the streets, as we've seen recently. But when I saw Michael Moore on Broadway, he said this. He said, when we wake up in the morning, we wash our face and we brush our teeth, and then we should call our congressperson. And I thought that's what being an activist is. So being an activist means just being informed and being engaged. And a lot of people think that, well, I really can't make any difference. My vote doesn't matter. But they don't realize that if all of us put a little bit of time, like making a phone call to our congressperson, and right now, of course, with the elections going on, and we have all of these incredible issues that we're fighting right now that are on the ballot, it gives all of us a great opportunity to become activists, whether it be to get on board and do some phone banking or texting for one of the propositions. We have, of course, Proposition 15, which is going to be so important because it'll bring in $12 billion into our school systems and into our local communities. And of course, what they've been saying out there that this is going to affect homeowners and it's going to affect small businesses is just a complete lie, because it's only going to affect 10% of the large corporations like Disneyland and Chevron, Amazon, that are not paying their fair share of property taxes. And so we have so many issues right now that are on the ballot. We have so many good candidates that are running for office and I call it organizing 101. When you get involved in a political campaign or on an issue campaign, this is where you learn about politics and you learn it from the ground up. So I would just say to everybody that is listening, please get involved. And even if it means just making a few phone calls, asking people to register to vote, we still have a lot of people that haven't signed up for the census, which I know is also very important, because when people sign up for the census, they bring in California, $2,500 for each of us that gets counted in the census. And yet we have a lot of, especially our Latino community, when you're wrapping up this whole celebration, we have to remember that our Latino community is extremely important because we are so many just in Los Angeles alone. And if we do not participate in the census, Los Angeles will lose millions and millions of dollars. We might say billions of dollars if people do not participate in the census. And we know that there is so much fear, and I'm sure you've talked about it during this whole period of the celebration of Hispanic Heritage Month. So people are afraid and they're confused and they think, well, I have to be a citizen to fill the census. And of course you don't, because we sued the Trump administration and we won. So that means the census means all people, regardless of their legal status, whether they're undocumented or green cards or citizens, that we all can participate and need to participate in the census. And I'm sorry that I went on that one, but even getting somebody that you know and calling them and asking them, please participate in the census, give your answer those 9 questions. It'll take you 10 minutes. That makes you an activist.
I think that was a beautiful answer, because I think one of the things I feel I hear from students and others is that they feel like they don't make a difference on their own. And yet what you're saying is every vote, everybody that fills out a census, in some ways that's an act of activism and democracy, and what we need people to do, because those do. There are a lot of people and they sum to something really wonderful. And I think it's so important when you say that and we continue to say that. Do you remember, even as a child, I mean, when do you think you would have said to yourself, boy, would you have thought of yourself as an activist even young, as a child at home, or were you watching people and saying, that's what I want to do? How did that first burst out of you?
Well, actually, since I'm 90 years old, and I believe that I was 8 years old when I found a bumper sticker and I put it on somebody's car to vote for Franklin Delano Roosevelt. And then I was a Girl Scout for 10 years of my life, and that really helped me to be and not to be afraid to be doing things in public. And then, of course, I danced. Back in the 30s after the Depression, they hired teachers to come into the classrooms and to teach us music and to teach us art and to teach us dancing. So I was lucky to be able to learn how to do tap dancing and also how to play the violin, because we had all these wonderful teachers. And hopefully that will happen after this pandemic, that they will hire artists that can teach young people how to do art and how to play music, and things that we don't have in our school systems anymore, unfortunately. So I was very, very blessed. And in my family, we were also very politically active. I was actually born in the state of New Mexico. My father was an assemblyman in the state of New Mexico. And so being engaged in politics was also a way of life for our family. So I was very, very fortunate in that respect to know the importance of voting and the importance of being engaged. And I am glad that you mentioned democracy, because if we do not engage, then we don't have a democracy. It's like if you have a football game and half the team doesn't show up, and then you can't have the football game. Well, democracy is like that. So if we don't show up, especially as Latinos, because we are so many, if we don't show up in the census, if we don't show up in voting, then democracy is not working. It's not only not just working for us, it's not working for everybody else, because people depend on us to come and participate. And if we're not there, then we kind of spoil the whole game of democracy. We just spoil it. We ruin it because we don't show up.
Thank you. I think that's really important for us. And our students, I think you'd be really proud that our students have been pushing for many initiatives like this on campus. We're even trying to get 100% voting. I don't know that we'll get it. I have got renewed spirit for getting people to do the census, but it's our students who are really the ones leading. And I think hearing from you is really important for them. And I know that they very much want to know a little bit more about some of your pivotal moments in the civil rights movement, the farm workers movement, the tumult of the 1960s. And for many of our students, this is history for them. This is living history. And they would love to know if you have any lessons from those experiences that you think can be important for us to think about today. Maybe even give us buck up our spirits if they tend to flag.
Well, the main thing that I want to share is that we have to understand that we individually and collectively have the power to change things. That is the one thing that we had to say to the farm workers when they were so desperate to try to get toilets in the fields and drinking water, relief periods, unemployment insurance, the right to organize. And they didn't have a clue how do we access these benefits, these rights that we are being denied. So by teaching them, you can organize little by little. And we had house meetings for 3 years before we called that strike in Delano. Actually, we weren't going to go on strike. We were going to organize for 5 years until 1968 and then have a huge strike. But the Filipino brothers kind of went ahead. They kind of jumped the gun and they went on strike ahead of us. So we had to support them or walk away. And of course, we decided to support them. But the main thing that I learned is that, yes, or that we have to teach people, we have to make them understand that they have power and not to give up. And you can imagine how difficult it was for farm workers because there was so much fear that they would be fired and they wouldn't have any work. So making them understand that they had that power gave them the courage to go on strike and go on marches and go all over the country to do boycotts and ask people to support them. And of course, we won because we had 17 million people in the United States that listened to the farm workers. But the one point I do want to make is, yes, we did get the toilets in the fields and we got unemployment insurance and the right to organize here in California. But all of the marches and the strikes and the boycotts, none of it would have mattered had we not put it into a law, into legislation that could be implemented and that could be enforced and where people could be held accountable. And I think that's the main message I want to convey to all the students out here. It's important for us to protest, it's important for us to march, but we've got to get it into the form of a law.
Do you think, is there a single moment or a couple of moments that just stand out for you when you were in the farm workers movement that really made you realize that in spite of all the trouble, real progress was making a difference for real people's lives? And sometimes it's not even the big moment. Was there even just a time when you said, okay, all this is really going to be worth it?
Well, I think the moment when the farm workers came out on strike was a great moment because people are literally walking off of their jobs. And the strike went on for 5 years. And so many of the farm workers, they stood out there for 5 years just picketing and doing the work that had to be done. So I think the biggest lesson that I have learned is that people, can be engaged and they can go out there and they can do the work that needs to be done. And that is the important lesson that we need for our entire country is we want a government for the people, by the people, but the people have to be engaged to make it happen.
It's so true. Our students would like to know how you cope with failure and things not going your way. And you touched on that a couple of places, but I think that's something that they really would think about all the time.
Well, we know when something doesn't go our way, that just means we have to do something different. And, we just celebrated 100 years of women's suffrage. And when people see all of those documentaries now about how many decades women had to march and to keep working to get women's suffrage, and they finally received it. And you had it passed on to generations. And the thing is, in today's world, everybody out there, and you all know this better than I do, that we don't have to wait for decades to make something happen because now we have all of these tools at our disposal. We have the internet, we have our cell phones, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook that you can mobilize people instantly like we have seen. And so we can see that those changes that we need, like universal health care, pre-college education for everybody, universal child care for the women, that these are things that we are going to be able to achieve a lot sooner because we can get the word out to everybody. But on the same time, on the same token, we have to talk to those folks that are still not sure that they can make a difference and keep talking to them and make them understand that they need to be part of the movement also. Part of this racial justice movement, gender justice, part of our environmental justice movement. And we need everybody to come in and help in these movements to achieve what we need to do in our society.
Oh, thank you. One of the questions they asked was what you immediately talked about. How do we fight for all marginalized, oppressed people of color so things can change? And clearly that's something that you see that is the fullness of that battle. If you look at your activism over the years, do you think it's been particularly different or difficult for women activists? Of
course it is, because we as women, we have been so socialized that we're supposed to be accommodating for men. And sometimes it's very difficult for us as women to take our place and to use our voice and to use our power. And I like to quote Coretta Scott King, who said, "We will never have peace in the world until women take power." And we really need to understand that. And I think we're getting there little by little. We're now like, I think we have 36 women in the US Congress, but we need to get to 50%. And I like to say that wherever there's a board table out there, people are making decisions. If we do not have equal numbers of feminists at that table, they're going to make the wrong decision. So we've got to work very, very hard so that we can get equity for women and we can be equal in decision making.
I was reading a story recently about you in the LA Times a few years ago, and you were talking in particular about the role of women in fighting environmental injustice. And that really struck me because I'm an environmental scientist and I think a lot about that. And I don't know if you'd like to share any of that, but they've made a big difference in some of the ways we think about things like pesticides. And that's something that you were pointing out in that article.
Yes, and the thing is that we see that women, and we think of who are the leaders right now in our environmental justice movement. We've got Greta, this young teenager from Germany, and then Jane Fonda. You know, Jane Fonda is dedicating the rest of her life to work on the environmental issues, and she's actually just written a book about all of her work with her Fire Drill Fridays, where she has had over 2 million people that have engaged in her Fire Drill Fridays. So I was to say to everybody, go out there and get Jane Fonda's book. I think the title is What Can You Do? And all of the proceeds of the book are going to go to Greenpeace, this environmental organization. And this is something that we really have to focus on. I recently heard a scientist tell us that we are at the point right now on our planet in terms of global warming that they had predicted for 2050. And we're only 2020, and we had the hottest temperatures, I think everybody knows, that have ever been recorded on the planet right here in California in Death Valley. And so that is so scary. So we know that this has got to be a priority. At the same time, we know as we transfer from fossil fuels, from oil and coal, that we've got to be able to provide living wage jobs for all of those people that are employed in these industries. And by the way, in California, we do have a lot of Latinos that are working in the oil industry. And I think the same we could say about Texas and New Mexico. They do a lot of those oil workers are Latinos.
You know, our students are so interested in what they can do, you know, and they know, you know, that you mentioned both of your kids graduating from USC, and, you know, they ask if you have thoughts for them about how, as college students, they can engage. And also if you have tips, how do you prevent yourself from getting complacent? Clearly, you live your life of passion, and that must be something that just you fuel others and it fuels you. But they wonder, how do you challenge yourself to keep going, and what can they as students do to make a big difference?
Well, the great thing about when you get engaged in organizing and doing something for others, and like right now, I talked about the elections and the issues that we're working on right now, it gives you so much energy. And when you have that energy, you want to keep going. You want to be reaching more people, convincing more people that they also should be engaged, because we have so many challenges. And some of these issues that we've been dealing with, you know, for generations, the racism in our society, the sexism, all of these inequalities that we have, the homophobia, all of these things that we need to change. And the main thing is that we have to learn that we are the only ones that can change this. We really can't wait for somebody to come in on a white horse and do it for us. It's up to us. We are the ones that are responsible to make change happen. And once people understand that, then I think it kind of gives us, you know, kind of the direction that we need, and to know that our energy needs to be put into that path for social justice, following John Lewis, following Cesar Chavez, following Judge Ginsburg. That we are the ones that have to take up that mantle and continue the work. We can't wait for anybody else to do it. You know, just before Robert Kennedy was killed, when he was assassinated there in Los Angeles in 1968, his last words that he said before he was assassinated, he said, "We have responsibilities and obligations to our fellow citizens." And I think the pandemic has shown us that we have to take care of each other. And I just want to throw one word in here about that I'd like to ask people to share with their families at Thanksgiving dinner, and just to remind everybody that we are one human race. And I would just like to ask everybody, don't use the word race unless it's attached to the word human race. because we are all one human race. We're Homo sapiens. Our human race originated in Africa. Human civilization originated in Africa. And that makes us all Africans of different shades and colors. And so I like to say to the KKK, to the white supremacists out there, just get over it because you're Africans. And you know what? If we were all together, I would ask you, take the hand of the person next to you, turn to that person and say, hello, relative. Hello, relative. And we know the only way that we survived on this earth as Homo sapiens is by protecting and taking care of each other and sharing everything that we have with each other. That is how we survived on this planet. And that is how we have to survive in the future by, again, protecting and caring and taking care and sharing.
Thank you so much. I am just taken by your optimism and your energy. I think you sort of said it pretty clearly. If not now, when? And if not us, then who?
Exactly.
We had a list of people who have been inspirational. And Dolores, you are an inspiration to millions of people. And having this chance to talk with you, very special for our community. So we're all thanking you and so grateful to have you here. It really means a lot. I had told you earlier, I'm standing in front of this beautiful painting, and it's a painting by Carlos Mares, who is a Mexican painter, and the Fisher Museum has a lot of his art. But could you close by just telling us a little bit, because you know his art and you know him, and you said you're a real fan of that.
Yes, I knew Carlos Almaraz. He was a really good friend. He helped us paint many of the murals for the United Farm Workers when we would have our conventions. He and Barbara Carrasco were very good friends. Barbara Carrasco is also a muralist, and her work is actually going to be in the County Museum of History at the Ali County Museum of History, one of her great murals. But he was a wonderful person, would work all night to do murals, and it's a shame that we lost him. But I'm so happy to see that you have a collection of his art there at USC. That is just wonderful. And I want to say to everybody out there, and please visit our website, doloreshuerta.org. And we have a guide there for the propositions. We know there's a lot of money out there on the television right now. And some of these very big, wealthy billionaires are, trying to keep people still in poverty by, trying to get all of these Uber drivers, trying to deny them the labor rights that they, under our state of California laws, that they deserve. So we're going to ask people to vote no on Prop 22, and then on Prop 21 to vote a yes, because that will help us get rent control. So please get those messages out there. We have a voter guide on the Dolores Huerta website. And we have been working very hard on the census. Our people have been going door to door with shields and masks on in hot and smoky weather to get people to sign up for the census. And of course, now we're going to be asking people to help us also with getting out the vote. And then we've been doing food banks throughout all of this pandemic area to make sure that a lot of people are able to get food, and then raising money for our undocumented, especially the farm workers who are essential workers working out there every single day. And many of them are not covered, unfortunately, by a lot of the resources that have been given to other people. So I just want to kind of give that little commercial out there for our foundation.
You did a wonderful job. And I think everybody has paid so much attention. We're going to have a lot of people watching this again to get more insights. Thank you. And I want to take a moment just to thank everyone who helped us to close out our Latinx History Month. We are, as we talked a little bit earlier, in the middle of LGBTQ and History Month. And that started more than 30 years ago by a high school teacher who noticed that there was a lack of education around LGBTQ plus history and identities. So there will be events and activities planned at USC throughout the month in their honor as well. You can find them online on the USC calendar. Thank you, everybody, and be safe. And
Madam President, could we end with a chant?
Yes.
Okay. And the chant, I would like to say, and I don't know if people can unmute or not, but if they can, maybe you can just say it. And I like to end my talks with a chant that says, and I ask people, who's got the power? And I want them to say, we've got the power. And when I say, what kind of power? You answer, people power. So maybe we can do that virtually. So I could just say to everybody, who's got the power?
We've got the power.
We've got the power.
What kind of power?
People power.
Power.
Okay, can we both go forward, become activists, and be sure that we vote and that we get engaged and we bring democracy to our country and to our world. So with the big old si se puede, which means yes, we can. I would like to end with a big old si se puede. Y muchas gracias. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.